Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jono White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jono White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Kevin Black. Kevin is the host of the Black Market Leadership podcast and author of upcoming book on chaos, which we're going to chat about and hear about today. I can't wait. But we're also going to hear some of his story, and I'm really excited. Welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Oh, thank you so much. I am very, very excited. Congratulations on, by the way, the podcast is fantastic. And I see a
Thank
lot
you.
of your work online. So congratulations. I'm really excited to be a part of this. And hopefully I can deliver some value to your listeners.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for the kind words. So to start off, can you give our listeners a bit of an overview of what you do?
So I am I carry three titles. I'm a leadership expert. Um, I'm also an executive coach, but most of all, I'm what you call a strategic advisor. And what that means is I work usually with C-suite executives, and I help them connect strategy and leadership. I am the school that strategy and leadership are totally connected. And what makes my work really cool is I bring senior executives in, and we do computer war gaming like a military staff. And this is where you get to see people under pressure. And then I show them how to lead and how to strategize under pressure, under stress, very much like they do every day, except they just don't realize it. So I've been very fortunate. I've had one client who had four employees. I've had another client who's had 80,000. So I've worked really from small companies to Fortune 5. But I got to tell you though, my favorite thing in the world is to work with companies in rapid growth. I've worked with there's a small company you might have heard of called LifeLock, identity theft protection. I was one of their two strategists a long time
Wow.
ago who went through the whole war gaming. So I was with them when they were at 30 million in revenue to went over $500 million under my time supporting them. And I got another client now who's 25 million, and now they're worth 150 million in revenue. So
Wow.
that's the kind of stuff I like to work with and do.
Excellent. Yeah, that's exciting. And I feel like I'm going to learn a lot from our chat, particularly about your book. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about your story. What are some of those moments, even back when you were growing up, that really shaped you to become the person and the leader you are today, Kevin?
So if you're to ask me who I am, I always tell people I am a U.S. Army veteran. And one day I read Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead, and I decided to do something productive with my life. So after 4 years of a military college called the Virginia Military Institute, which is basically West Point in the South, and 6 years active duty, John, I'll even volunteer for a war, and they sent me. After 10 years of being in uniform, I had this epiphany. You know what that epiphany was? I just never like taking orders from people. So I'm a slow learner. So I decided to take my I
That's
decided to
gold.
take yeah, so I decided to take my knowledge of all the things I've learned at a military institution and active duty army. I was infantry and a tank officer during the war. Uh, I knew I could take that information and convert it for business executives, and that's why I've been doing really since 2005. I've been in this field, but how did I come to this part to where I am now? I look back at it now. I was a 4-year high school wrestler. I have chewed up big things called cauliflower ear. I know you guys. I've probably seen a lot in Australia because big on sports. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so I have cauliflower ear. I was a 3 years of a 4-year career, a captain of my wrestling team. Been extraordinarily competitive. I went to a VMI for the reason because I knew it was a hard school, and I graduated there, and I went into the infantry, which is probably the most difficult. It's the premier branch of the army. At least that's the most celebrated one, I should say. Well, I should say this: if you go infantry, the chances of you getting promoted are very high. So I've always taken the hard route. And I went 6 years in the army. I think 1 year of the army I actually enjoyed. The other 5 years I was just waiting to get the hell out. And then the good thing is the war came up, and I was able to save money. And I finally realized that, I'm never going to get into this, but just because you have leadership capabilities and attributes and maybe desires does not mean you have to be a leader. You don't have to be. It's all about
Mm.
what you want to do. So I enjoy working with companies. I am good as an advisor, but would I want to be a chief executive? No, not at all. I don't want the pressure. I don't want the drama. That's just not who I am. So I'm very comfortable with what I do, and I'm able to, I think, successfully translate the lessons I've learned to people who don't have that experience, and make it fun and worthwhile, and actually make it advantageous.
Yeah, that's wow. Thank you so much for sharing some of your story. And I like what you said there, that just because you can be a leader doesn't necessarily mean you have to be or should be. And that's I completely agree, and love how intentional you've been to do what you are doing. And that's a great aha moment that you shared, where you went, "Wait a second, I don't like being told what to do." Uh, which hearing that and knowing about, hearing you tell your story of being in the army, I'd be thinking there aren't many places where you're being told more what to do than the army.
Well, yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I would tell you from the again, I was in the infantry branch, and you have to realize the infantry branch is alpha male central. And I'm not
Mm,
exaggerating to say that you're around men. Well, when I was there, it was all men. I think they've integrated now with women. But when I was there, it literally, and I'm gonna watch my language, but it's always about how bigger is yours to the other. It's always a comparison, always. And I don't mind that necessarily, but when it becomes detrimental or just so, it becomes so stupidly competitive. I'm like this is not smart. We should be smarter about this. So again, the irony though is behaviorally, if you met me, you probably hear from my voice, I'm extraordinarily intense. um, uh, and I think if you were to see a lineup of people who could probably lead a team, you point me out easily. I'd be like, yeah, I don't want it unless it's really in for me. So I know what I'm good at. I know what I can, what things could lead me to lead if I had to, and I
hmm
have no doubt my capability. I just don't want to. It's not. I don't want to burn the calories, as they say. I don't want the ulcers. I rather do
Yeah.
things. I rather master my own domain.
Mm.
Yeah, and that really kind of comes to the book. Not a lot of stuff's written on chaos. So why not hopefully become the master, or at least a subject matter expert in this interesting field?
Yeah, I love that. I love that approach, and I would love to hear more about the book. Can you give us a bit of an overview, bit of the story behind the book? Because I'm really leaning in, I want to learn about it.
So again, thank you for the question and the interest. Looking back, I've asked myself, is there a common denominator? It's kind of like the first Greek philosopher Thales. What's the one in the many? What's the one thing what's the common thread that you've seen through everything in your career, Kevin? Being a rifle platoon leader, I did military intelligence during the war. I worked at the strategic level. I've been around generals, I've been around multinational generals and organizations. And again, I've worked with small companies to big companies, even at the C-suite. What's the one common denominator? And that is that most leaders are not prepared for chaos. They really are not. They treat chaos almost as if it's an anomaly. We make a plan, the plan goes bad. There's been something wrong with me. Why did this thing happen? So I really started diving into it. And frankly, I've been writing this book for 6 or 7 years. Uh, and I tell you, just the whole practice of writing, you got to get into, and as you know, as an author, getting to that practice of writing, the more you write and the more you read and the more you contemplate, your subconscious, all these things come out. And I started making all these connections about chaos. Why does this happen? Why does this happen? Is it objective? Is it totally subjective? What is it? So as of now, I have 65,000 words, 16 chapters, and I have an agent already. And we think we can get in from some big publishers. But the gist of the book is this, that in fact, the book title, I've named it now, Strength in Chaos, A Leader's Guide to Mastering the Uncontrollable. And the whole purpose is three things.
Mm.
One is, what is chaos? Why is chaos inevitable? Number two, why do people react to it in different ways? And number three, what can you do to master it? So those are three big areas I address. But right now, the chaos element is just a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to write about people running around with their hair on fire.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm so excited for you to bring it out. So tell us a bit about what chaos is.
So I have a definition that I'm working with, and I think this definition works. And you please tell me what you think. I think chaos, now this is important. Listen to my words. Chaos is the perception of losing near to total control of your environment. Now, hear that. The perception of losing near to total control of your environment. And what that means is, just imagine this. Put this hypothetical in your head. You're in a building, you're in a coffee shop, and the oven, one of the ovens catches on fire, and the other things the fire just spreads out. from your experiences, there are going to be some people who are going to scream bloody murder, like, oh my God, this place we're going to die. And they're going to run around in circles. But there's going to be some old crusty guy or gal like, all right, everyone head on out, single line, orderly. The fact is that when people think they're losing total control, they react away. So I think it is, first of all, it is a matter of perception. And that perception comes from either your behaviors or your experience. But no matter if it is a perception, it's still there. You still have to address it as a leader. So I really think if chaos is usually defined as either near to total disorder, I think is the perception of losing of disorder. And I would add one more thing. Chaos, what I've noticed in my career, that chaos is not a particular point in time. Like a crisis, you could say, is a particular point in time. Chaos is a pattern. And do you remember the old pinball machines?
Yeah.
Remember you hit the slot, that ball would go up there, and you hit the ball left and right, and it zigzags, boom, 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 left, right, but it keeps going down. It keeps going down. Gravity takes it to that hole which your brain doesn't go into.
Yeah,
I think, and what I've been writing is I've even identified a scale of chaos, a scale I think you can objectively measure. And why this is important is, if chaos happens and you're in it, you can get out. Chaos is not always bad. Sometimes chaos is a very positive opportunity to say, you know what, things are falling apart. We have to make hard decisions. But Jono, the fact is, the further you go down that scale, the worse things become. In fact, I call it a cascading effect. It's almost a compounding effect. And if the leader doesn't step in to make the hard choices at the time, it's going to go further down that scale. And the choices become much harder, so much so to, you get down near the bottom of the scale. And if your company's in total chaos, not only do they think leadership's incompetent, but they think that they're totally untrustworthy. What's the first thing? You got to fire the entire senior executive leadership. You got to get rid of them. You have to restart. That's a hard decision to make. But you see what I mean? So knowing chaos, knowing when you're at it, allows you to say there's a way out, but you have to make some hard decisions. If you delay, it's going to become much harder, and ultimately it might affect you and your employment.
Yeah, I love that scale. Actually, it reminds me of there's an Australian, a guy named Tim Dyer who spends his life's work is he goes in and works with churches who are going through a church split. And often, so you imagine like dealing with chaos. He spends his whole life going into these, and you know what? Anytime there's deep beliefs, and you've got an organization, an institution where there's some sort of split, or he's also gone in and been almost a consultant to work with places where there's been really, really horrible situations that have happened, which, people can sort of imagine the sort of things that have happened in an institution where he walks in. And he talks about a scale of conflict, which is really why I love your scale of chaos, because that always stuck with me. And what you just said was like a light bulb moment, because he describes these different steps and basically says, if you get to this level, 3 or 4 or 5, I can't remember exactly how his scale works. He says it's now too late. It's actually a case of how do we mop things up? It's too far gone. And so it's interesting that you've identified a similar, completely different perspective. But for him, he was saying when things look like this, that there's not going to be any sort of reconciliation. People might hope, but it's from experience, it's not possible. It's just a case of mopping it up. So for you, can you unpack a little bit more of that scale? And for leaders listening going, hey, Kevin, how maybe they're on the board of an organization and they're trying to work out where they sit on the scale as an organization because they've got some really tough things going on. What are some pointers around how to know where you are at organizationally or individually as a leader around the scale of chaos?
So, well, again, thank you for the question. And by the way, you talked about those divisions. If you don't fix them, they last. I was just thinking about what's that group called? Those two groups, the Sunni and Shia. That's right. Yeah. You might have heard of them. Yeah. You might have heard of these guys. Yeah. A little bit of chaos in those ranks because of the divisions.
True.
So again, I'm still in the editing phase, so I don't think that this terminology is going to change, but when you hit chaos, actually, let me step back. One thing you have to understand about leadership is that, at least in my perspective, leaders, in fact, let me do this. Let me just give you a brief explanation of my understanding of leadership, and I'll show you how it affects chaos. So in leadership, there are really two pillars, two fundamental pillars that every leader has to adhere to. And we call that, I learned this in the Army, and I think they're actually right about this, mission and people. And what that means is if you're a leader and you have a team, that you are responsible for accomplishing the mission in the most efficacious way practical. That means the most effective and efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your mission. I mean, that's obviously you're hired to create this computer program. You have a team. That's your job. But though, you have to balance the other element, which is called the people element. And what does that mean? That means if you're working with a team, you have to ensure that they are durable, that team comes out of that mission, of that assignment, not just undamaged. They could be tired, they could be exhausted, but they have built themselves up. They develop themselves up. Why? Because like a military unit, you want to make sure that team continuously can drive that level of performance over the long term. And I don't watch NASCAR or car racing, but I don't know why I think about this. I was thinking these car drivers who get all these these companies to back them, these endorsements. They had this great race car. They race it for one race, but guess what? They have 10 more races to do to actually get to get the end. If you race that car and win the first race, but you destroy that car, you have failed. So as a leader, how can you simultaneously accomplish that mission in the most efficacious way, along with taking care of your team? So in that way, in that perspective, you really have to balance the people and what I call the systems. As a leader, you're not just in charge of influencing people. You have to know what your mission is. You have to analyze your mission. You have to communicate it. You have to ensure your people understand it. You have to plan it. You have to do contingency planning. You have to do a performance review system. All the things which give feedback to these people saying, your team saying that we're doing this correctly. Do this, don't do this, change this. So you're coming out better in the future. And when you do the chaos scale, what you find is like the first level, I call turbulence. That literally, if you can imagine your head like a ball.
Yeah.
And you drop a ball in the water and that ball hits the water, it fractures a little bit. They're fractures. And this is where people, usually in turbulence, it's when you have teams together who may not have worked with one another. It's like me working with you, like, oh my God, I didn't expect that Jono. I thought he was Mr. X, not Mr. Y. I was not expecting that. Communication broke down. Our planning wasn't good. But the point is, you can recover from that, but it's a shock to the system. But if you don't fix that and you continue working that way, it goes to my second level, which I call turmoil. This is where you don't have a fractured whole. You have a broken whole. You have some pieces which actually fragment from the whole. And this is what we call silos. You have some departments, teams now working in isolation with the organization. They can get the job done, but it's usually a higher expense and it's just a longer time. It's not the efficacious way. This is usually a combination of not knowing your people and not having the right systems. But the third level is what I call incompetence. This is where things just get so bad, where we went from a fractured whole to a broken whole. Now we've come to a shattered whole. This is where your teams actually form into little cliques and everyone's doing their own thing. And why? Leadership is incompetent. They're not as stupid. They're incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. So we know how we're going to do it better. And now all the resources which should have been allocated to make this whole organization a success, team A, B may be a success, but all the other teams are not. And guess what? You're going to go down on the ship. And the fourth one, which is the worst one, is I just call this one the level of distrust. This is an accumulation of everything. And not only is your leaders incompetent, but you don't trust them. Like this is almost like government work because, people are out for themselves. They're not there for the company. They'll do what they want. And sometimes you get this mindset where, it's every man for himself. If the company doesn't care about me, screw them. I'm going to take advantage. I'll get my paycheck. And when it sinks, I'll leave. That's just the worst. And that's why I really describe those scales. I'm trying to think of a good analogy of besides the ball dropping in the water, but like an Alka-Seltzer, that little thing hits the water and it goes down deep, and the final end is total disintegration. And at
Yeah.
that point, my friend, if you hit disintegration, this is where, frankly, you might have to sell pieces of the company, sell the company and get some value of one part, or you
Mm-hmm.
need to fire the entire leadership team because it's their fault for making this happen. But that's bad stuff to get in that level.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And but it's also good, I think, particularly for those who might be sitting on a board or who are listening and would like one day to sit on a board. It always cracks me up when I think of myself and others who at some point have gone, oh, it must be, I'd love to sit on a board. And the truth is that if you're on a good and healthy board of any organization that's worth its mission, right? You're talking about the sort of stuff that this is ultimately the big decisions that a board needs to make. So it's at the highest level to go. If things get this bad, or you come into a new board, or you come in as a new person on a board, and you do an analysis and go through the chaos scale and go, no, next level. Okay, no, things are is actually a complete lack of trust. People are operating in their own silos. Then that's where I'm guessing you may have to make an incredibly difficult decision to replace a whole executive team. But at least that walking in that, because the other way to learn that, I'm guessing, would be to spend 5 years trying to rescue that and then realize, no, it was actually broken the whole time.
Those are great points. Sometimes, in fact, I have one example that shows the actual scale in action, because one of the women who I was coaching went through something kind of like this. They didn't really get to level 4, but what happens is the board intervenes. They bring in their own people, and guess what? Their own people are absolute train wrecks. If you get a chance, I watched this yesterday on HBO. There's a documentary called Icon, about Carl Icahn. And I think 3/4 of documentary I love. I mean, it's HBO. They always throw the social, the social statements in there. And I'm like, ugh, get this off. It was so good until this. But if you watch about Icahn, here's a guy who is an activist investor who dealt with boards. And, what you find is a lot of people who don't, especially investors, they always, what they always say, that they always look at the racehorse, meaning the company, and they ignore the jockey, meaning leadership. It's really a lot of the investors today, and even the boards, who really have an appreciation for leadership. And I have found, probably not surprisingly, but I have found some of the best executives I have met have had some kind of military experience. And I don't mean necessarily the Army, but they realize that's one thing in the military is you're taught that leadership is almost like a combat multiplier. That if you could have a small company but with great leadership, you can totally exceed expectations, totally exceed it. In fact, think about the movie 300 with King Leonidas and the 300 Spartans fighting Darius and hundreds of thousands of Persians. That's the effect of leadership. But the fact is, a lot of people don't see that. They see leadership training. And by the way, I hate the word leadership training. I call it leadership education. It's about having the right people in the right roles, being able not just to influence, but really to strategize, to connect the dots, to help people drive the mission from the ground up. That takes a certain kind of mentality. It takes a certain type of behavioral pattern, and it's not hard to find. So, when I get this book out, I'm excited because, first of all, I wrote this. It wasn't ghostwriter, so I'm excited about that. All the gray hair I've earned from it, I really did earn. But you know what? The great thing about doing a business book is I'm not writing Stephen King. I'm not expecting 100,000 people to buy it. But what I am expecting is people who realize how important the topic is, and the people who I'd want to work with would actually reach out to me so I could support them. That to me it would be the greatest value and talking about the subject.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you haven't shared about the book and about the subject matter that you'd like to add? Just because I know what it's like to have a subject you're so passionate about. And I just thought, is there anything else you'd sort of add into it as a taster for leaders who are listening and could be listening down the track? So there might be people listening when this book's come out. So we'll make sure we give you every detail we have right now. So because that the main thing will be Kevin Black. People can look that up. But yeah, anything else you wanted to share about the book?
Well, yeah, two more things. One is, this is why I love talking about the subject. We just talked about one chapter. That's one chapter. I have a chapter preceding that called Control Factors. And I've identified, I think I've identified 15 outcomes. Now, this is important. Outcomes, not inputs. Outcomes that if you can deliver these outcomes, you will most likely mitigate chaos. So I actually show you, if you're in a leadership position, here are the 15 things, whether they're core issues, whether planning a preparatory, or whether in execution. If you do these, you are going to be a rock star. And if you don't do them, I even show you a way to have a trace back in that scale of what you're probably missing. So that's one, the control factors. But the one thing, and I think you've talked about this before in your podcast, behaviors play an enormous role in chaos, because different behavior profiles see chaos differently. Or I should say this, they respond to losing control differently. That is a tremendous has a tremendous impact on if chaos happens, and it's a great indicator of what could happen. Some people like to take autocratic control. You can probably tell what they're going to do. Some people would want to control just the outcomes, the quality. That has different patterns. Some people, when they get under chaos and lose control, they want to talk and plan and not execute. You can see where I'm going with this. So there really are so many different aspects to that. So I'll be excited to get this out.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think it's going to be, I think you've identified probably the biggest thing that initially that's really sticking with me is what you said about perceptions. And I love that, because it's so true that the oven, that fire in the kitchen is such a great example, people's different reaction. I'll give you another example, which really reminds me of that and why I think there's so much truth in it. I remember when I was with some friends, and when I was younger, and one of our friends is so caring and compassionate that she had sort of run ahead of us, and or she was ahead of us sort of walking, but there was someone who had tripped over. They were drunk and they'd hit their head on the gutter. And so she saw this person, and so she's got no medical or health, care, but she's just such a caring person. She's there next to this person, helping them, just because that's the sort of person she is. And she calls out to me and another mate, and my friend who was standing with me at that point, he's now a doctor, but at that point he was a paramedic. We call them here in Australia an ambulance. He was a paramedic, and so and what was interesting in this moment was I watched our one friend screaming, "Come quickly, help." I started running because I heard the screaming, and I'm just like, ah. And I turn around and he's walking. And I'm like, come on, there's something wrong with this person. You need to help. And anyway, I was like, what are you doing? So fast forward, and he sort of gets there and helps. And that person ended up being fine. She was fine, the lady who hit her head, which was good. But afterwards, I was like, why? I said to him, it was like, why were you walking? That was so, and he said that one of the things they learned as a paramedic is that, majority of the time, what you're best to do when you're the person who's going to be stepping in to sort of take control of a situation, the leader, is to actually be calm when everyone else is sprinting everywhere. So that's why he walked, because he's taking in the situation, and it's what he's done in his training. And I just loved the fact that everyone else saw chaos because we didn't know what to do, but his perception and the way he stepped into the situation calmed everyone down. He took control of the situation, and he did so intentionally. And it was that perception thing, wasn't it? Because it's like a couple of us, our perception was, this is crazy, we don't know what to do. But he was able to actually have the perception of, no, I need to take everything into it. I need to look at everything. There is something legitimate that I need to go and deal with. But he did it in a calm way. And your story just reminded me of that that we're going back, 15 years. So similar sort of idea.
No, it is. And in fact, let me ask you this then. So given what we've talked about, given what we just discussed, what you just told me, let me ask you this: was there chaos present?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. No, I guess there wasn't. in terms of, well, we probably would have created chaos, me and the other friend, but no, it was actually because that's what he deals with every day, and he just knows, and he knew what to do about it. And so I'd say no, what probably wasn't chaos present, it was actually our perception that created the chaos.
No, right. And that's your leader. Your leader says, no, there's no chaos present. But consider this, what did the team feel? They felt
Oh
chaos,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so if in essence, if you're a leader, you may say that's not chaos. Are you crazy? But guess what? If your team feels it, it doesn't make it less real. So what's the lesson? You have to prepare your people for something like that, because just because you don't feel it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's why that's the
Yes.
challenge about chaos, because you got to balance the subjective with the objective.
Yeah, that's great. So actually, the challenge as a leader isn't just to walk in a calm way. It's actually to train your people to see it in the same way.
Exactly. So, and if they do that, his job or his or her job is so much easier.
Yeah, that's great, Kevin. I'm so excited. I think this book's going to help a lot of people. Well, let's finish today with Leadership Express. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, what is another book? Because we've got one great book about chaos that you'll be recommending to people. What's another book that you've gifted to people?
That I've gifted to people. I would say, I actually love this book. It's called Scipio Africanus. It's a Roman general, and it was written by B.H. Liddell Hart, who was one of the premier military strategists. And just real briefly, Scipio. Everyone knows about Hannibal crossing the Alps with the elephants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Scipio's a dude that beat him. You've probably never heard of him. Scipio was became a young Roman general who, when Hannibal was outside the gates, created an army even against the Roman Senate. He did his own thing, took the battle to the enemy, and literally compelled this mortal threat to Rome to follow him and follow him back to Africa. And he actually beat it. Yeah, he decisively defeated Hannibal. It's a great book. It's a small book, but I love the stories. And the reason why I love the stories is I like people with ambition. I like people with with chutzpah, who will take the challenge and do it their own way, even if it goes against convention. So if you like that, I think you'll like the book.
Wonderful recommendation. Any great podcasts? And it'd be great for you to mention your podcast as well. I'd love for people to go and check that out. But as well as your own podcast, any other great podcasts that you're listening to and enjoying, or any other sources right now that just Kevin's loving reading, watching, listening to?
So I love well, these are great questions. There's actually two podcasts. One is the Megyn Kelly Show. She used to be on Fox News and then went to, I think, NBC. She has a fantastic podcast where talks about a lot of issues. In fact, she had Dr. Law. I mean, it goes from sex to politics to law, and I've always liked law. So I love that. And I think the other one is Tom Woods. Tom Woods is a very famous libertarian out there, neither Republican nor Democrat. But if you want to get news or an analysis, especially about leadership and control and chaos, if you want to get a perspective, which you're not going to get off mainstream, I highly recommend it. In fact, I'm actually blown away with some of the subjects, especially in economics. And frankly, if you allow me, you asked me about a book. I mentioned Scipio, but I'll tell you another book is Economics in One Lesson. And I think it's a great book for. It is a fantastic book, even though it's not a leadership book at all. But leadership is about seeing reality as it is, about cause and effect and logic. And there's so many logical fallacies out there today that if you can detect them in real life, you're sharpening your mind to detect them with your team and with your company. So Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, a gem, an absolute gem that has nothing to do with leadership, but it's about thinking correctly, which I think will really benefit the audience.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Great. I'm loving these recommendations. What's a great piece of advice you've received?
God, I gotta. Oh boy. Oh God, I got one, but I'm. Oh boy, I'm trying to think. I have one. I can say it nicely, but it's kind of. Are you editing this thing?
You can say it how it is. That's fine.
If you're an entrepreneur, don't don't stick your thing in the cash register. Don't mess around with people in with other people in your. That's the first thing that came to my mind. I
Yeah,
probably the
yeah.
hard one, but I've heard if you're an entrepreneur, yeah, don't mess around with your clients. Go in there and do the work and stay the hell away from them.
Yeah. No, I like that because it's interesting. At another level, I remember chatting with someone who's really experienced again with boards. I don't know why I keep that, but I think because so much of what you talked about was is so important. Chaos. I was thinking not only for leaders and managers and entrepreneurs and executive team, but people who want to or currently sit on boards. But it just brought to mind as well what you just said, which is hilarious. Is this idea of for boards. I remember someone saying, just be careful having your significant other on a board with you or on a team with you. And so it's like the other side of the coin to what you just said. It's like, don't get involved with people that you're working with, but also think carefully before bringing people you're involved with into, particularly say at a board level where you need to be able to have these robust discussions. No one's defensive. So I think that's hilarious, but good advice.
Well, thank you.
That's gold. Okay, a movie or TV show that really impacted you, Kevin?
That really impacted me. My favorite movie in the world from a child, even today, is Patton, 1970, with George C. Scott. Have you seen it, Jono?
No, I haven't. I'll have to put it straight on my list because I love movies, but I haven't seen Patton.
Oh, Patton it's a biography of George Patton, and it
Yeah.
won. The irony is, I think it won. God, like 3, 4, 5 Academy Awards. But
Okay.
John, it won the awards at the height of the Vietnam War, which is almost unheard of. And you know who wrote the script with Francis Ford Coppola, who wrote The Godfather.
Oh, no way. Oh, I
Yeah.
love Francis Ford Coppola's work. That's there you go. That's a great. Oh, I'm just loving these. I always love asking these questions because it's funny. You mentioned before, it's not leadership, and you got to have some definition for things. But I love calling this podcast "Leadership Conversations" and then chatting with leaders and leadership experts, like yourself, and then we talk about a movie called Patton from the 70s, and it's like that's not at all your traditional leadership how-to, but I bet more, some of us have learned more from a movie like that than a bunch of classes we've done or nonfiction books we've read.
Can I add one more thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this lets you know that even though the movie's about a military general, it's not a leadership movie at all. It's actually about a man and his destiny.
Yeah.
And if you like behaviors, you'll be easily detect the behaviors. But this is about, again, I've always I don't believe in destiny, but I'm someone who's like, this is what I'm good at, it's what I should be doing. And I think from my young childhood watching that, I have just been mesmerized by, here's a man who trained his whole life, align his body and soul for it. And what would happen is his mouth would get in the way. And it's based on a true story. So it is a fantastic movie. It's a long movie. Jono, it has an intermission. Okay. It has an intermission.
That's I love a good movie with an intermission. Okay, one more question. If you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you say?
Advice. I would ask a question. I'm saying, I want you to really ask yourself why you want to be a leader, and think about why. This is going to require you to really think about your life, what you want to do. I have worked with many people before who see not technical leaders, but they see people leaders, and they think that is the height of success. And I'm like, why? Why do you want to do this? And the reason I ask is because usually behaviorally that's not their sweet spot. So
yeah,
the fact is a lot of people just don't define their goals. And I don't mean like their 1, 2, 3, 4 year goals. I mean, what they want to do in life. What do you want to be known for? I think if you can answer that, then that kind of advice will be like, man, is this really the road I want to take?
Yeah.
Or is it, or should I adjust?
Yeah, that's great. And let me throw a book recommendation in there on that point because it's such a great question. Patrick Lencioni's book, The Motive, I think it's called The Motive, The Motive, which is a fascinating book. He basically talks about how he wishes he wrote that first And that whole book is exactly what you just described. It's this question of, why do you want to be a leader? And his big sort of argument in the motive is that if there's some underlying reason that you want to be a leader that's not really about realizing that is the place that you can best serve others, then you're setting yourself and everyone else up, short, and you're going to sell everyone short. So and maybe if you recognize that, then one of the takeaways from today is that it's okay not to be a people leader and to pursue something else that is in your wheelhouse, and as you said, isn't going to burn the same calories.
Yeah, and I would tell you, I know you being from Australia and me being from the United States. One thing that I think maybe still is, but it used to be a part of our DNA in this country, is that we were born on rebellion. We're extraordinarily independent people, extraordinarily independent. And there used to be a real skepticism for people who want to be leaders. Like, why do you want to take this responsibility for me? Like, there's something underlying it. So I think if you want to do something like that, you need to have, you really need to understand yourself. What is the real motive here? How's this going to benefit you, rationally benefit you? Because people who just want to take control for sake of control are usually bad news. And I think you could probably see our entire political class, or I think of that ilk.
Yes, yeah, and I think we all have seen it, haven't we? When and we see straight through it, and yet sometimes it's harder to see in the mirror. Which I've definitely had that revelation before, going, oh, okay, what is my motive here? And I think that's why I loved your question. And what a great idea to say, no, I'm not going to give a piece of advice. I'm going to ask a question. That's a leadership lesson in and of itself. Well, Kevin, we could keep going for another hour, but and maybe I'd love to invite you back down the track. Maybe when the book's out, we can do another episode and promo it, and part 2, and see where some of the things that you've been talking about have landed. And that'd be great. So yeah, the invite's there for you. The invitation's there. Where can people find you online right now? And also knowing with podcasts that people may be listening down the track and going, oh, is the book out yet? And they might want to jump on and get it. So just some helpful info for people to find you online, Kevin.
Sure, thank you, and I will gladly take you on your invitation. If you want to find me, my website is my website is kevinblack.co.co, not com. That's the country singer, kevinblack.co, and my podcast is Black Market Leadership, and I'm on YouTube, and I've had some interesting guests. In fact, one guy who was actually not only chasing Bin Laden, but Bin Laden actually recommended to the world that he read his book. So it's a lot of fun. I have to ask you real quickly, do you enjoy doing your podcast?
Yeah, I love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah, same here. It took me 4 days, Jono, 4 days to get my 4-minute intro done. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? This is killing me. This is going to kill me. Now it's second nature, but you got to get into the rhythm, right?
Yeah, it's like anything else, isn't it? It's like, what's that quote? There's I can't remember who said it, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, but that idea of realizing you just got to embrace that you're going to be bad. Like the way they put it was, you just need to embrace that when you first do something, you're really going to suck at it, and that's actually part of the process. And so I definitely think that was the case for me. There were parts of it where. But every time you do another show, chat to another person, refine some questions, ask something and realize that was a terrible question, you get better at it. And then I can't remember who it is, otherwise I'd give them credit, but they say, and then you realize you don't suck as much, and then maybe you don't suck at all, and then actually you get pretty good at it. And so I feel like that works for nearly any skill in life, and it's definitely true of podcasts as well.
Yeah. I've had people say, I love that podcast. I'm like, oh my God, I sucked on it. What are you talking about?
That's right. Especially, that's the beauty of episode 1, though. No one's listening at that point. So that's
that's right.
They will listen, but you just block that out of your mind, because people, if they go back and binge listen the start, you just get a bit of the raw. It should be an encouragement to anyone who wants to start a podcast. Go back and listen to some of my early episodes, and you'll realize anyone can do this. They just need to work hard enough at it. So, well, I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. A quick reminder that we also have the John O. White Leadership Podcast, and Leadership Question of the Day, two other podcasts where I give you more traditional sort of leadership content. But I want to finish today by saying a massive thank you to Kevin for coming on, for chatting about your upcoming book that I'm really pumped about, and for just being really so much fun. Like that's one of the things, like you just said, that I do love most about doing this podcast is talking about really important topics, but having fun while we do it. And today was a real joy. So thank you, Kevin. It's been a real pleasure.
No, thank you. This has been a great conversation. You can tell it's a good conversation because we're totally over time. I promised you 30 minutes or 20 minutes over. So thank you for tolerating me. And
well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you, if you're going, not me. Well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, John O'White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out John O. White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.